Hi, Chris Thomas here with inCity Magazine, and we're in the fabulous, it's a District of Columbia,
Absolutely.
Washington, D.C., where the U.S. laws are made. And at the forefront, of cannabis is an organization that's the Marijuana Policy Project, also known as MPP. And I am fortunate enough to have Mr. Stephen Hawkins, who's the executive director of MPP. How are you doing today?
I'm well, Chris. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us, inCity Magazine. Introduce yourself to our audience.
I come to the Marijuana Policy Project having been a civil rights attorney, having been an executive officer with the National NAACP, having been the American section head of Amnesty International. And so I come here with that background, and for me, coming to MPP has been about and appreciating the fact that we still have 850,000 people arrested every year for possession of marijuana. Many of those people look like you and I, and part of our legalization effort is to ensure that those sorts of racial disparities end once and for all.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Imagine that we're at the end of 2019. It has been the best year possible for the legalization of cannabis slash marijuana. What happened during that year to make it the best year ever, for cannabis and marijuana?
I would say what would make for the best year in 2019, we would see 6 states pass for responsible adult use. Those states are New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Illinois, Rhode Island, and I think Hawaii. Those states are all sort of active right now as we speak, and there is the strong possibility that all of those states could legalize for adult use. I think, Chris, what would also make for this to be the best year possible, that not only will those states pass laws for adult use, but they will also pass bills that create expungement laws that go back and look at all of the people who were incarcerated and convicted for marijuana possession, and expunge all of those records and recognize that this was part of the war on drugs, that it was at the very heart of the war on drugs, and that it was racialized from the very beginning. So to me, being able to go back and expunge those records as we see these states legalize would make for a very good year.
Okay. Can you expound a little bit more about how we get there? I know you mentioned about some things. How do you think that we get there?
We're going to get there because through the lobbying that the Marijuana Policy Project does, through the conversations that are already taking place within these legislators. We're going to get there because there's community conversations now about job opportunities that are possible through legalization, and we're going to get there because people begin to address whatever fears they have of and stigmas that are out there around marijuana. The states will, I think, look at also the possibilities for the tax revenue that comes out of this. So to give an example, in Connecticut right now, it's projected to bring in $300 million a year in tax revenue, which could help to reestablish the state's pension fund, which is underfunded, just as an example. So those are some of the ways that we're going to get there, and the conversations that get us there.
Thank you. Do we really understand, today how marijuana affects the body?
We understand a fair amount. More can be researched and learned. Here's what we do know, Chris. This plant, this natural plant that has grown in Mother Earth for, since probably from the Jurassic period or something like that. We do know that the Mayan civilization out of Mexico, going back millennia, thousands of years, the Mayans were using this plant for medicinal purposes thousands of years ago, right? They understood that they may not have had the term for epilepsy, but they understood that giving some of this plant had curative effects. Now we know that CBD oil and some marijuana derivatives have had miraculous results for children with epilepsy, for example. We know that marijuana has incredible capacity to help with people who suffer severe pain or chronic pain. We know that sports athletes talk about wanting marijuana for medicinal purposes over the opioids that they're being prescribed. Huge conversation in the NFL right now, for example. So that's what we know right now. There is more research that needs to be done. Given where our government is in terms of the federal block, the ban that still exists, it impacts research. There's only one laboratory farm in the United States which is government sanctioned to grow marijuana. It's in Mississippi, one farm. That's not sufficient for research purposes. This is a plant which has 20 plus elements to it. There's only one that actually gets you high, that has this psychodynamic effect called THC. But the other elements, Chris, we're still learning about and unlocking their potential. So there's, again, things that we know about the plant and things that with proper medical research and a government that gets behind that research, we could learn a heck of a lot more.
Okay. There's a stigma, about marijuana, and you mentioned it goes back, the use of it goes back to so many thousands of years. Why does marijuana fear so many people?
That fear, in my view, has been tied to the race politics of this country, certainly in the 20th century. If you look at the jazz age and jazz musicians using marijuana, just as Donald Trump now racializes the issues around drugs coming up from Mexico, some of that same argument was playing out 100 years ago about marijuana coming up from Mexico, how it was being used by jazz musicians. Fear, this is still, I'm talking about, apartheid America, right? So there was all of the fear that there would be interracial dating as a result of young white girls, for example, being exposed to marijuana and black jazz musicians. So all of that was part of the stigma that said that marijuana was dangerous. There was a film made in the 30s called Reefer Madness, which talked about how if you smoked marijuana, it would drive you insane. And all of that was sort of the propaganda of the period. And so that has lingered in our psyche in the country. And that's part of the work that my organization has to confront.
Okay. So we speak about legalization, of marijuana. What do you think true legalization of marijuana and the impact it would have on the U.S.? Can you?
Right.
How would you describe legalization?
So, if I look at legalization, I'm going to compare it to how this country dealt with alcohol, right? And alcohol, when the Prohibition era, it came out of something called the Volstead Act out of the time, and when that was repealed, and when the federal government did away with its ban on alcohol, then the states were left to figure out how they wanted to structure the sale of alcohol, whether they even wanted to allow alcohol to be sold. So we tend to think that with the end of prohibition in I guess what was that then the towards the end of the 20s, that everywhere alcohol began to be sold overnight. That's not the case. Mississippi did not allow the sale of alcohol until 1961. So we will see the same sorts of developments. You know, there are package stores in places like Virginia. Some in Colorado, for example, they only recently are allowing beer as you and I know it to be sold in grocery stores. They used to sell something called weak beer that I had never even heard about. Weak meaning low alcohol content. I never heard of this term until recently. So what I see legalization looking like will be that the federal government lifts the ban, that the states are allowed to decide how they want to structure the sale of marijuana. We do know this. It will be the legal age will be 21 and above. There will be responsible adult use. The states will have to determine strengths of and concentrations and all of that. What it also means is the end of an illicit market, and the states actually regulating and the sale and the use and the taxing of the product. This is an area that could be the next biggest industry that we will see developed in our lifetime, second to the tech industry. It will generate $140 billion in revenue. And to put that in perspective, all of beer, wine, and spirits right now in the country, that's about $180 billion. So it will be that big, and it will generate about 1 million jobs. So that is what full legalization would look like.
Legalization, I'm gonna also assume will affect criminal reform. What impact will it have on those who are in prison for non-violent crimes that are dealt with marijuana?
Hopefully, all the people who are in prison or jail right now with marijuana convictions, for people who have been released but still have that on their records, they will have the opportunity to see those records expunged. We have several states right now that have gone ahead and started that process, California probably being the biggest, where thousands of people now have come forward to get their records expunged. What it means is that will not carry with them for the rest of their lives. Having, as we know, having a criminal conviction can impact your capacity to get jobs, to get housing, to be able to see your children in a foster care situation. All of these things play out. But beyond also how it will change lives, and particularly when I look at the racial impact, because you're talking about many people of color have been gone to prison or jail with marijuana convictions. This is when we think about the war on drugs and how it was targeted at the black community, we have to think of marijuana convictions as being at the very heart of the war on drugs. When you think about all the police interactions that we've heard about, where young black men have been brutalized by the police or shot and killed, a lot of those will stem from the police smelling marijuana or that sort of suspicion. So So this will not only change you know, who's in prison or records, but ultimately it should change policing, right? Because police should no longer be able to, you know, search a car because they smell marijuana. Because if it's no longer legal, that cannot be the grounds for those kinds of police interactions. I don't think that's going to change overnight, but I'm hoping that, you know, this next generation of civil rights attorneys will begin to push on police to change their behavior, which so much of it has been defined around policing of young black young black teens and young black adults around marijuana. So it will usher in a new day.
I was looking back, you know, one of the hot terms, you know, for 2018 was cannabis curious. You know, that particular term as far as in searching. And you know, earlier we were speaking about, you know, different strains of marijuana. Why is it, or how is it that marijuana is stronger now than it is, you know, before?
Yeah, I think we're beginning to see more science applied, and with that, you know, marijuana is a plant, so you can create different strains of it, you know, through the same way that we create different strains of peas or carrots or anything else that grows in the ground. You can vary, you know, seeds and things of that nature. This isn't genetic engineering, it's just simple botany. But with that, you can change the concentrations within the plant and make it stronger. You know, just so folks understand, it's not just, what's fascinating about the plant is it's just not the level of THC that determines the how powerful the marijuana is. You can have something with a very high THC but not have the same impact as something with less THC, but some of these other compounds. They're all sort of called cannabinoids. So the science has had some impact, but to me that explains again why you need to have you need to take something like this out of an illegal market and figure out how you allow it to be regulated. Because just like with alcohol, the government has created, you have proof, and the government controls sets parameters, barriers in terms of how strong an alcohol product can be, and the public knows what it's getting. The government can come in and create some regulatory guideposts here, right? So that do we need some kind of product out there that's so strong that people can't get up? Right? I don't know, but that's where the government can come in and help make those kinds of decisions, right, and make sure that consumers know what they're getting in the space.
I guess that brings into a conversation about standardizing marijuana. What would it take to standardize it?
Yeah, I think I think right now we have 10 states that have legalized, and all those states have commissions now. Some of those are sort of standalone, where they create like a cannabis commission. Some are tied to like consumer protection or part of the alcohol bureau. But we have to understand this is the beginning of an industry. It's the very birth of an industry. Right now, these commissioners are still figuring things out, right? 10 years from now, they'll all have a far better sense. So we will create a structure ultimately around this that, begins to classify strengths and concentrations and, And just like we see in the alcohol market, I think we'll ultimately see in the cannabis market. Whether it will always be sold in stores, as or whether you'll be able to, see it in various other places where a person will be able to buy or purchase, really remains to be seen. And I think a lot of that's going to just depend upon each state.
Okay.
Mm.
Speaking about each state,
Right.
making some decisions on that. Canada now is the entire
Right.
country as of
Right.
October
Mm-hmm.
of 2018 is legal.
Mm-hmm.
What can the U.S.
Hmm.
learn from Canada? I mean, I know it's been a
Right.
short time period.
Right.
There are other countries that
Right.
have legal
Yeah.
cannabis and marijuana as well. What
Right.
can the U.S. Learn from places where marijuana is legal?
Sure. So Canada right now is the first, country in North America to legalize. It's also, part of, like, I guess, the G20 at least. It is a significant, economic player in the world. And what we can learn right now is that is really a business lesson, and that is that if the United States waits too long, Canada will seize parts of the global market that are emerging, right? There's conversations in Germany, for example, around legalization, and this is going to be a commercial trade, and not just around, the recreational adult use, but the development of medicines and all the technology that goes with that. Canada is going to leapfrog the United States, and that should be a concern to anybody who's thinking about where global industry is going. Other thing that I see happening in Canada, which would happen here if the federal government was to lift the ban, is now Canada is having home delivery. So where we are now, right, is that we have dispensaries in the United States, bricks and mortar. You have to go in a store, right? But in every other aspect of our life right now, it's about Amazon. It's about something being delivered to your home. So it's almost like we're creating a structure around the marijuana industry that doesn't exist anywhere else. And so, Canada right now, you can go online and buy, and it'll be delivered to your house, right? And that's what Americans have come to expect, right? So not everybody wants to go into a dispensary. Sometimes people want to retain their privacy, right? Think of senior citizens, right? We know that expansive growth right now in the use of marijuana is happening with the aging adult population in this country, because it helps you with your arthritis, it helps you with your aches and pains, and you have seniors right now in a place like Virginia. They're getting on buses literally that come to the senior citizens facility, their residents, and will take them to a dispensary. Wow. And that's happening in different places in the country. Some places seniors can actually get a delivery, but that's where Canada is leaping ahead, and I think that's where lessons we can learn. So I think there's much to gain from at least seeing how Canada develops its market.
Great. This is has been wonderful content.
Thank you.
For all of our listeners who tune in. One other quick thing, and I know we spoke about it earlier. It wasn't a part of the list of questions that I sent you. However, DC is at the pulse of law, and you know that as of right now, there are the wall, along with the government shutdown has taken place. How does that affect cannabis, and what can cannabis legalization learn from that?
Sure. So there is an effort right now, and we're part of it. I mean, ultimately, what we want to see happen, we want to see Congress deschedule marijuana from what's called the Controlled Substance Act. So what your viewers need to understand is that right now, cannabis is considered a Schedule I drug, which puts it on the same level as heroin or cocaine or fentanyl. No one has ever clinically overdosed and died from marijuana, ever, right? So for it to be on the same schedule as heroin just is logically, it doesn't make any sense. It has stayed there because of the way marijuana has been demonized, for lack of a better word. So the effort is to deschedule it. Businesses want to be able to bank, right? You cannot get a loan right now. You cannot do regular transactions if you have a marijuana business, because under federal law, even if your state allows it, like in California or here in the district, under federal law, it still is a federal crime. And that means that banks can not, if a bank sets up a business, that bank is worried that it could have the Drug Enforcement Agency at its door, or the FBI charging that bank with drug trafficking, right? So that is what their efforts to change in Congress, to create, to either deschedule ultimately, or at least to create a safe harbor where states that have said that marijuana should be legal and that there can be retail sales, that those businesses are protected. My fear is that Congress will get so bogged down. If the beginning of 2019 is any example, this is going to be a year of fights with Congress, with the administration, and that could slow things down. But hopefully not. I mean, hopefully cooler heads will prevail. But with that though, and as these businesses expand, part of the work that I'm concerned with is making sure that there are entrepreneur opportunities for people of color, to make sure that African American job creation happens in this space. There are opportunities here for anyone who wants to come in and career switch or think about where their future is, and it will be an area of growth, and there will need to be some programs in place to give people an opportunity. Right now, and this goes back to the question around Congress, if banks cannot do business, then you as a black businessman cannot easily get a loan, right? So if you can't get a loan from the bank, then it's all about private assets, right? Our people don't have private equity like that, right? Venture capital funds. So right now, we're not seeing black business development in this space because banks cannot give loans, right? So it's harder to come into this market now, and Congress has to act, I think, partly just to allow there to be greater business opportunities, which people of color can then take advantage of.
Well said. Yeah. I hope that the inCity magazine audience gets a lot. I know they will get a lot of great nuggets of information from you. Thank you for sharing, with us what MPP is doing. For those who want to visit the website,
sure,
some contact information, website, or anything.
So your viewers would, if you go to mpp.org, they would find information on all the states that we're working in. They would find out about how we look at model legislation. They would see links to other sites that could also give more information, such as business development and all of that. So I would encourage folks to go to mpp.org.
Mr. Hawkins, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for all of this wonderful information. And thank you again. That is it. We're here at MPP's headquarters in Washington, D.C. Thank you for tuning in to inCity Magazine.